The arrival of Crew 1073. It was a quiet morning on the spaceship Orion. As it glided through the dark expanse of space, its sleek silver body reflecting the distant stars. Inside, the corridors were busy, with alien cadets rushing to their classes and instructors preparing for the day's lessons. Today was different, though. Today, something unexpected was about to happen. Crew 1073 had just arrived. The doors to the docking bay slid open with a hiss, and in walked the newest cadet. Everyone stopped in their tracks. All eyes were on her, this tiny human girl, standing out like a bright star against a backdrop of towering alien beings. She was young, no more than 17, with brown hair tied back in a messy ponytail. Her uniform, a simple one made for the Academy's new recruits, looked out of place on her small frame. The other cadets were much taller, much stronger, and much more advanced. They were from all corners of the galaxy, tough, smart, and powerful. And then there was her, a human, a species they had always considered too weak, too primitive for the Academy. The instructor, Vornax, a towering alien with emerald skin and 4 eyes, stood at the front, ready to welcome the new cadet. He had seen many recruits come and go, each one bringing their own unique abilities, but none like this, none like her. The Academy was known across the galaxy for only accepting the best, species from far and wide, who had passed every test of intelligence, strength, and skill, earned the honor to attend. It was a place where only the most exceptional could thrive. And yet, a human had made it into Crew 1073. No one could understand how or why. "Welcome to Crew 1073, Vornax said in his deep voice, his 4 eyes narrowing as he looked at the girl. "What is your name, cadet?" "Emma," she replied, her voice small but clear. "Emma Williams." There was a long pause. Emma felt a chill run down her spine as the silence stretched on. She was used to being the odd one out, but this felt different. The others were staring at her as if she were some kind of alien, an anomaly in a place where she didn't belong. Vornax seemed to collect himself before speaking again. "Emma, I trust you know the rules of the Academy. Only the best are allowed to stay. If you fail even one test, you will be sent back. Do you understand?" Emma nodded, her heart racing. She had always dreamed of being part of something bigger, of proving that humans were more than just a small, fragile species. She didn't know what had gotten her this far, but she wasn't about to turn back now. "I understand," she said, her voice steady. Vornax raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed by her confidence. "We will see." With that, he turned and gestured for her to follow him. The rest of the cadets quickly moved aside, some whispering to each other, some eyeing Emma with curiosity, others with disbelief. She could feel their gaze on her, but she refused to show any fear. This was her chance to prove that humans could belong among the stars, just as much as any other species. As Emma walked down the long hallway, she couldn't help but notice how different everything was. The walls were smooth and glowing with strange, alien symbols she had never seen before. The air was thick with the scent of something unfamiliar, a mix of metals and energy that hummed in the background. She felt a sense of awe wash over her, but also a deep sense of determination. She belonged here. She had to. The journey to the training area felt like it lasted an eternity, but eventually they'd reached a large open room. The other cadets were already there, standing in neat rows, awaiting instructions from Vornax. Emma stood at the back, her heart pounding in her chest. She had no idea what kind of tests awaited her, but she was ready to face them head-on. Vornax turned to face the group. "Today," he began, his voice booming, "we begin the first test. This is where you will show your worth. Do not think because you have made it this far that the journey will be easy." Emma glanced around, noticing that many of the cadets seemed unfazed by the challenge. They were used to this, but not her. She was a human, and no human had ever made it this far. She had no idea what was coming, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to give up without a fight. Vornax's eyes flicked toward her. "Cadet Emma Williams, you may be new here, but I expect you to keep up. Do not disappoint me." The weight of his words hung in the air, and Emma took a deep breath. This was it. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The other cadets may have looked at her with doubt, but she would prove them wrong. The test began, and Emma stepped forward, ready to face whatever challenge lay ahead. The unknowns of the academy, the doubts in her mind, all disappeared as she focused on the task before her. This was her chance to show the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated. With each step, Emma felt herself growing stronger, more confident. She wasn't just another cadet. She was here to make her mark. And the academy, the aliens, and everyone watching her would soon know that she belonged here, no matter what anyone thought. The room was silent, save for the soft hum of the overhead lights. Every cadet was on edge, standing tall and prepared for what was coming next. Emma's heart raced in her chest as she scanned the room. The instructor, Vornax, stood at the front with his arms crossed, his 4 eyes fixed on them. She could feel the weight of his gaze, and it made her nervous. "Today," Vornax began, his deep voice echoing through the room, "you will face the first challenge. This test will test not only your strength, but also your intellect, agility, and resourcefulness. You will need all of these to survive in the academy. You will not be judged for how fast you finish, but for how you approach the problem." Emma swallowed hard. The room was filled with an air of intense anticipation. No one dared to speak, the atmosphere heavy with uncertainty. Every cadet knew that this was their moment, and they had to make it count. Vornax gestured toward a large holographic display on the far side of the room. A glowing outline of a complex maze appeared, shifting and moving, with walls that seemed to rearrange at random. It looked almost impossible. "Your goal is simple," Vornax continued. "Navigate the maze and reach the end. You will encounter several obstacles along the way, some physical, some mental. But there is one thing you need to keep in mind. Only one cadet will succeed. The others will fail." Emma's stomach dropped. She had no idea how she could even begin to tackle such a challenge, but she wasn't about to back down now. She couldn't. This was her chance to prove herself to the academy, to prove to the alien cadets that humans were capable of more than they thought. The room's energy shifted as each cadet was assigned their starting point. The cadets from stronger species stepped forward confidently, their faces set with determination. Emma noticed them glancing at her from time to time, their expressions skeptical. She could feel their doubts, but it only fueled her resolve. "You may begin," Vornax's voice boomed, and with that, the test began. The moment Emma entered the maze, the walls shifted around her, creating new paths and blocking off old ones. She felt a rush of adrenaline as she hurried forward, keeping her senses sharp. The air inside the maze was cool and smelled faintly of metal. Her breath was steady, but her mind was racing. She encountered the first obstacle quickly, a series of walls that seemed to move faster than she could think. They were solid, but there was a gap at the top of the wall. Emma looked up and saw an opening just big enough for her to squeeze through. She hesitated for a moment but then pushed forward, her small body sliding through the gap. As she continued, she faced more challenges. There were pressure plates that triggered walls to slam shut, and she had to think quickly to avoid being trapped. There were strange, glowing puzzles that required her to manipulate their patterns to open the next door. With each challenge, Emma's heart raced, but her mind stayed clear. She couldn't afford to make mistakes. She had to prove she belonged here. All around her, the other cadets were also navigating the maze, some more gracefully than others. Emma saw one cadet, a tall, muscular alien with reptilian scales, struggling with a puzzle. He growled in frustration, clearly unable to solve it in time. Emma didn't waste time looking at him. She had to focus on herself and the task at hand. She came to a large, open chamber. The walls were covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow with an unnatural light. A deep voice echoed in the room, speaking in a language Emma didn't understand. The symbols shifted, rearranging themselves into a complex code. It was a mental puzzle, and Emma had to solve it to move forward. She stepped closer to the wall, staring at the symbols. Her mind raced as she tried to make sense of the patterns. She realized that the symbols weren't just random. They were based on mathematical sequences she recognized from her school lessons back on Earth. It was all about recognizing patterns, and she knew this was her strength. She quickly began decoding the symbols, her fingers tracing the patterns on the wall. As she worked, she could hear the sounds of other cadets rushing past her. But Emma didn't let herself get distracted. She kept focusing on the puzzle. Sweat trickled down her brow, and she could feel the pressure mounting. She was the only human here, and she had to succeed. The symbols finally clicked into place. A door slid open with a soft whoosh, revealing the next part of the maze. Emma exhaled in relief, but knew there was no time to waste. She had to keep moving. As she advanced, she heard Vornax's voice over the intercom. 2 cadets have already failed, he announced. 1 has made it past the first obstacle. Emma Williams is still in the game. Emma's heart skipped a beat when she heard her name. She had made it farther than she expected, but she knew the hardest part was still ahead. She rounded the next corner and found herself standing before a massive, towering wall. It was made of smooth metal, with no obvious way to climb it. The floor beneath her feet vibrated, and she realized that this was a test of strength and agility. It was a challenge she couldn't solve with her brain alone. Emma took a deep breath. She was small, but she was quick. She sprinted forward and, using all her momentum, jumped at the wall. She grabbed a small ledge near the top, her fingers straining to hold on. Her body felt weightless as she pulled herself up, one hand at a time. With a final effort, Emma reached the top of the wall. She stood there for a moment, catching her breath, looking out over the maze. She had done it. She had made it through the toughest part. And she wasn't done yet. Emma felt a wave of exhilaration as she reached the top of the towering wall. The maze stretched out in front of her, and for the first time, she could see the entire path. It was full of twists and turns, with the occasional obstacle hidden behind each corner. The challenge was far from over, but she felt a sense of pride wash over her. She had made it farther than any human cadet had before. But before she could move forward, she noticed something strange. There was a low, growling sound coming from the shadows. It was a sound unlike anything she had heard before. A chill ran down her spine, and she instinctively crouched down, peering into the darkness. The growling grew louder, and soon, something large and menacing stepped into view. It was a creature unlike anything Emma had ever seen. It had 6 limbs, covered in thick, scaly armor that glistened in the dim light of the maze. Its eyes were large and yellow, and its mouth was full of sharp, jagged teeth. The creature's breathing was heavy, its body tense as it advanced toward her. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had never been this close to a creature like this before. It was clearly not a part of the maze's usual challenges, and it wasn't supposed to be here. She had no idea what it was doing, but one thing was clear: it was dangerous. For a moment, she froze, unsure of what to do. Her mind raced as she tried to think of a way out, but the creature was getting closer, its eyes fixed on her. Emma knew she couldn't outrun it, and she wasn't sure if she could fight it off either. She wasn't trained for combat, but she did have one thing that might give her an edge: her human ingenuity. Without thinking, Emma dashed to the side, moving quickly and quietly. She couldn't let the creature corner her. As she ran, she glanced around, searching for anything she could use to defend herself. Her eyes landed on a large, sharp piece of metal protruding from the floor nearby. It wasn't much, but it could help her. The creature let out another growl, and Emma knew it was getting closer. Her pulse raced in her ears, and she could feel the sweat starting to drip down her face. The pressure was mounting, but she couldn't let herself panic. She needed to think. She grabbed the sharp metal piece and turned to face the creature, her grip tight around it. It was a makeshift weapon, but it would have to do. She stood her ground, ready for whatever the creature threw at her. She would fight if she had to. The creature lunged, its massive jaws snapping open as it charged toward her. Emma's heart pounded in her chest, but she didn't flinch. She sidestepped just in time, the creature's teeth missing her by inches. In a blur of motion, she thrust the sharp metal piece forward, aiming for the creature's throat. To her surprise, the creature stopped mid-lunge, its massive body halting in midair. It let out a strange gurgling noise and collapsed to the floor with a heavy thud. Emma blinked in confusion. She hadn't expected that. As she stood there, catching her breath, the creature slowly began to stir. It wasn't dead, but it was clearly incapacitated. Emma hesitated, unsure of what to do next. She had no idea whether this creature was part of the Academy's tests or something else entirely. But one thing was certain: she had just survived an attack from a dangerous alien beast. The creature let out a low growl and began to back away, its eyes never leaving Emma. It seemed to have lost interest in her for the moment, but she wasn't about to let her guard down. The maze was full of surprises, and she couldn't afford to be distracted. With the creature retreating into the shadows, Emma turned and continued down the path, her mind racing. The challenge wasn't just about solving puzzles and overcoming obstacles. It was about survival. She had learned it the hard way. And now, with the creature out of the way, she had to keep moving forward. But as she took her first steps, something else caught her attention. In the distance, she could hear the sounds of footsteps. Heavy, deliberate steps. It wasn't just one person. There were multiple cadets approaching, and they were moving fast. Emma quickened her pace, instinctively knowing that she had to stay ahead of them. They were closing in, and she couldn't afford to be caught. The maze seemed to shift around her as she ran, the walls changing direction and creating new paths. It was becoming harder to keep track of where she was, but Emma refused to let the confusion slow her down. She had come too far to lose now. As she rounded a corner, she came face to face with another obstacle, a massive force field blocking her path. It buzzed with energy, crackling in the air, and Emma could feel the heat radiating from it. She stopped in her tracks, unsure of how to get past it. But then she saw it, a small panel on the side of the force field. It was covered in strange symbols, but Emma recognized the patterns. It was another puzzle, just like the one earlier in the maze. She didn't hesitate. She knew this was her chance to solve it and get one step closer to the end of the challenge. With a steady hand, Emma pressed the buttons in the right sequence. The force field flickered for a moment before vanishing completely. She let out a quiet sigh of relief and pushed forward. There was no time to waste. The other cadets were still closing in, and Emma had to reach the end before they did. As she continued through the maze, Emma felt a renewed sense of determination. She had faced a terrifying creature, solved complex puzzles, and now she was ready for whatever came next. She was proving that humans could stand toe-to-toe with the galaxy's most advanced species, and that no matter the odds, she could survive. Emma's pulse raced as she sprinted through the ever-changing maze. She had narrowly escaped the deadly alien creature, solved another puzzle, and now she was determined to finish the challenge. Her heart was heavy with the knowledge that time was running out. She had to keep ahead of the other cadets, who were closing in quickly. The maze was becoming increasingly difficult, but Emma was not about to give up. She rounded a corner and came face to face with a strange metallic door. It was unlike anything she had encountered before. The surface shimmered in the dim light of the maze, and the door was completely smooth, with no visible way to open it. For a moment, Emma hesitated. She had seen similar doors throughout the academy, but they had always had a clear way to open them: buttons, levers, or panels. But this one seemed different. She reached out cautiously and placed her hand on the door surface. It was warm to the touch, almost as if it were alive. She drew her hand back, confused. What was this door? Why was it reacting like that? As she stood there, contemplating her next move, she heard a soft click. The door slowly slid open with a hiss, revealing a darkened room beyond. Emma's eyes narrowed as she peered inside. Something was off about this room, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. The air felt heavier, and the shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally in the corners. She hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. The moment she crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind her, and the lights in the room flickered to life. The room was filled with strange, alien technology, the likes of which Emma had never seen. Glowing symbols danced across the walls, and strange devices hummed softly in the corners. It was as if the room was alive, pulsing with energy. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, upon which rested a single metallic object. Emma's breath caught in her throat. It was an alien helmet, sleek, metallic, and covered in intricate designs. The moment her eyes landed on it, a strange sense of recognition washed over her. She couldn't explain why, but she knew that this helmet was important. As she approached the pedestal, she noticed something even stranger. The air seemed to crackle with energy, as if the very atmosphere was charged with an unseen force. She hesitated again, unsure whether she should touch the helmet. It felt like something was warning her, telling her not to interfere. But the pull was overwhelming, and she could feel herself inching closer. She reached out with trembling fingers and brushed the surface of the helmet. The moment her skin made contact, a shock of energy coursed through her body, and the room seemed to warp around her. The walls seemed to pulse, and the glowing symbols flickered erratically. Emma's vision blurred, and she stumbled backward, her head spinning. Before she could regain her balance, she felt a presence, an overwhelming sensation, as if she were no longer alone in the room. Her breath hitched as she turned, searching for the source of the sensation. In the corner of the room, a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness. It was tall and imposing, its outline shimmering in the dim light. Emma's heart skipped a beat as she took a step back. This was no ordinary alien. The figure was humanoid but enormous, standing at least 3 times her height. Its body was covered in dark armor, and its glowing eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her feel small and insignificant. The figure moved forward with purpose, its footsteps echoing in the silent room. Emma's legs felt like lead, and she couldn't bring herself to move. The figure stepped closer until it was directly in front of her. It tilted its head slightly, as if studying her. The tension in the room was palpable. Then the alien spoke. Its voice was low and rumbling, and though it was garbled, Emma could understand the words clearly. "Human," the alien said, its voice reverberating in her chest. "You have touched the helmet. Do you know what you have just awakened?" Emma's throat went dry. She couldn't speak, couldn't form a single word. She was too overwhelmed by the presence of the alien and the strange connection she felt to the helmet. She had no idea what she had just done, but she knew it was significant. The alien stepped closer, lowering its head until it was eye level with her. Its gaze was piercing, and for a moment, Emma felt as if it were looking directly into her soul. "You are not supposed to be here," the alien said, its voice laced with an emotion Emma couldn't identify. "But now that you have awakened the helmet, there is no turning back." Emma's heart raced, her mind spinning with questions. What did it mean? What had she just uncovered? And why was this alien so intrigued by her? The alien seemed to sense her confusion and offered a small, almost imperceptible nod. "You are a part of something greater than you can imagine," it said cryptically, "but you must prove yourself worthy. If you fail, the consequences will be catastrophic." With those final words, the alien turned and began to walk away, vanishing into the shadows of the room. Emma stood there, her thoughts racing, the weight of the situation sinking in. She had just uncovered something far more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. But one thing was certain, she couldn't turn back now. The helmet had chosen her, and now she was part of something far bigger than she could have ever known. As the door behind her slid open once again, Emma stepped forward, ready for whatever lay ahead. The maze wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about discovery, discovering her place in a universe that was far more complicated and dangerous than she could have ever understood. And she was ready to face whatever challenge came next. Emma felt the weight of the alien's words heavy in her mind as she left the mysterious room. Her heart pounded in her chest, a mix of fear, confusion, and curiosity. What had she just uncovered? What did the alien mean when it spoke of catastrophic consequences? And why had the helmet chosen her? The lights of the maze flickered as Emma stepped back into the twisting corridors. Her thoughts raced, trying to make sense of everything she had just experienced. She had always known that the Alien Academy was more than it seemed, but she never expected to be part of something so otherworldly. The helmet, the mysterious alien, and the strange connection she felt were all a part of something bigger than herself. As she walked through the corridors, her mind wandered back to the alien figure. It was massive, almost like a living mountain, and its presence had been overwhelming. But there was something about it that made her feel like she was being watched, like the alien knew something she didn't, and that thought sent a shiver down her spine. Emma turned a corner and was met with an unexpected sight. In front of her stood another cadet, but this one wasn't like the others. This one was older, much older, and his eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her stop in her tracks. "Human," the cadet said, his voice laced with an accent that Emma couldn't place. "You've touched the helmet, haven't you?" Emma froze. How did he know? Was this another test, another trial she had to face? "I can see it in your eyes," the cadet continued. "You've awakened something you don't fully understand. That's why you're here, isn't it? You were chosen." Emma felt a cold sweat break out on her skin. She wasn't the only one who knew about the helmet. And what did he mean by chosen? Before she could respond, the cadet's expression darkened. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, do you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The helmet is a key to something ancient, but it comes with a price. The question is, are you willing to pay it?" Emma's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to ask him more, wanted to know what he meant. But before she could speak, the cadet turned away and disappeared into the shadows, leaving her standing there, alone and confused. A cold sense of dread settled over Emma as she continued her journey through the maze. The cadet's words echoed in her mind, the weight of them pressing down on her chest. What had she gotten herself into? And what was this price that she was being asked to pay? The path ahead seemed more uncertain than ever. She didn't know who to trust, or even if she could trust herself. The helmet had chosen her, but what did that mean? And why had it happened at all? Emma's heart raced as she moved forward, determined to find answers. The maze was changing. It wasn't just a test of strength or skill anymore. It was a test of survival, of understanding, and of facing the unknown. And Emma had no choice but to face whatever came next. With every step she took, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the alien's words, the cadet's warning, and the mystery surrounding the helmet. They were all pieces of a puzzle, but the pieces didn't fit. Not yet. In the distance, she could see another door, one that seemed to shimmer with a strange energy, just like the one she had encountered earlier. She felt an inexplicable pull toward it, as if the room beyond held the answers she was searching for. Emma's pulse quickened as she approached the door, the air growing thicker with each step. She had to know what was behind it. She had to know what this was all leading to. As she reached out to open the door, her mind raced with the possibilities. What would she find on the other side? And what would it mean for her, for the Academy, and for the future of the universe itself? The moment she touched the door, a low hum reverberated through her body, and the door slid open with a quiet hiss. Beyond it, in the dim light, Emma saw something that made her heart stop. It was another alien, one she had never seen before. This one was different. It wasn't like the others she had encountered in the maze. It was ancient, its skin a deep shade of green, its eyes glowing with an intensity that made Emma's blood run cold. The alien stepped forward, its gaze fixed on her. Its voice was soft but powerful, carrying the weight of centuries. "Human," it said, its tone carrying a strange mix of reverence and warning. "You have awakened the key. Now, you must choose." Emma's mind spun. Choose. What was she being asked to choose? The alien continued, its voice echoing in her mind. "The key will grant you power, but power comes with a cost. Choose wisely." With those words, the alien stepped aside, revealing what lay beyond the door, a massive chamber filled with ancient artifacts, glowing symbols, and strange technology. It was unlike anything Emma had ever seen before, but it was clear now. The key was not just a helmet. It was a doorway to something far greater than she could have imagined. Emma stood at the threshold of the chamber, her heart pounding in her chest. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. But the question remained, was she ready to face the consequences of her choices? Only time would tell. The chamber before Emma was vast, unlike any room she had ever seen before. It was illuminated by soft, ethereal light, casting long shadows over the ancient artifacts that filled the space. The air hummed with a strange energy, a force that seemed to vibrate through her body, pulling her toward the center of the room where the alien had gestured. As she stepped inside, her eyes scanned the room. There were devices, relics, and strange symbols etched into the walls. Some of them glowed softly, others lay dormant, waiting for a touch, a command. It was like stepping into the heart of an ancient civilization, one that had long since vanished, leaving only whispers and mysteries behind. The alien, who had remained silent for the moment, stood motionless at the far side of the room. Emma could feel its eyes on her, studying her every movement, waiting for her to make a decision. The weight of the moment was almost too much to bear. Everything in this room seemed to have a purpose, a deeper meaning. And she was at the center of it all. Her fingers grazed one of the symbols on the wall, and the room responded. A low hum filled the air, and the artifacts began to glow brighter. It was as if the entire space was alive, reacting to her presence. Emma's heart raced. She had never felt so connected to something so ancient, so powerful. "You've come for the key," the alien spoke again, its voice echoing in her mind. But with the key comes the responsibility of the choice. Emma's eyes flickered to the alien. "What do you mean? What choice?" The alien moved closer, its eyes glowing brighter. "The key is not just a tool of power. It is a test. You are not here by chance. The helmet you touched was the beginning, the first step in a journey that will shape your fate and the fate of many others. The question is, are you ready to bear the weight of that responsibility?" Emma swallowed hard, her mind swirling with questions. She had never asked for any of this. All she had wanted was to survive, to make her way through the alien academy. But now, standing in the midst of this ancient chamber, she realized that her life was no longer just about survival. It was about something bigger. The alien paused, watching her closely. "This is your choice, human. You can take the key and use its power to change the course of history, to reshape the galaxy. Or you can leave it behind and walk away, leaving the burden of this responsibility to others. But know this, if you walk away, the galaxy may not survive the consequences." Emma's mind raced. The weight of the alien's words pressed on her, but she knew that there was no turning back. She had already stepped into a world far beyond her own understanding. She had seen the potential of the key, the power it could grant. But she also saw the danger in it, the possibility that it could bring chaos if used recklessly. The alien's voice cut through her thoughts. "Time is running out, human. Choose wisely. The key will either bring salvation or destruction. There is no middle ground." Emma's gaze fell to the floor, her mind a whirlwind of possibilities. She thought of her life before the academy, of the ordinary human girl she once was, unaware of the vastness of the universe. Now she stood at the crossroads of destiny, the weight of the galaxy resting on her shoulders. Could she make the right choice? Could she wield the power of the key without succumbing to its temptation? She wasn't sure. She didn't have all the answers, but there was one thing she did know. She couldn't turn back. She had come too far. With a deep breath, Emma stepped forward, her hand reaching out toward the key. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her decision. As her fingers touched the surface of the key, a surge of energy shot through her, filling her with a sense of power and knowledge. It was overwhelming, yet strangely comforting. The alien stepped back, its eyes narrowing as it observed her. You have made your choice, human. Now, the path ahead will reveal itself. But know this, the consequences of your decision will unfold in ways you cannot yet imagine. Emma stood in the center of the chamber, the weight of the key in her hand, knowing that her choice would set in motion events far beyond her control. The fate of the galaxy, the survival of countless species, rested on her shoulders. As the glow of the key intensified, Emma felt a strange connection to the ancient beings who had left these relics behind. Their power, their knowledge, it was all within her reach now. But what would she do with it? The answer, she realized, would not come easily. It would require sacrifice, courage, and the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With the key in her hand, Emma knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. The journey she had set in motion would change everything, and she was ready to face whatever came next. The future was now in her hands. As Emma stood there, the weight of the ancient key still heavy in her hands, she couldn't help but feel a strange sense of power. But with this power came a deep sense of unease. The alien had warned her, but the reality of it was more overwhelming than she had ever imagined. The chamber around her seemed to pulse with energy, as if reacting to the key she held. The walls, once dormant, were now alive with movement, symbols shifting and glowing, lines of energy spreading across the floor like veins of light. The atmosphere had changed, becoming charged with anticipation. The key, now embedded with Emma's touch, was part of something far bigger than she could fathom. As the room's energy grew, Emma felt something stir deep within her. It wasn't just the power of the key, it was something more. A presence, something ancient, something that had waited for eons to be awakened. She could feel it now, a force larger than any single being. It was as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath, waiting for her next move. The alien, who had been watching her in silence, finally spoke again. Its voice echoed in her mind, no longer calm and cryptic, but filled with an undeniable urgency. "You've done it," the alien said. "The key has been unlocked. The first step has been taken. But be warned, human. The consequences of your actions are already beginning to ripple through the universe. You may have just opened a door that can never be closed." Emma's heart raced as the words sank in. She had made the choice, yes, but she hadn't realized how deeply it would affect everything around her. The very fabric of reality seemed to tremble, as if her decision had disrupted something far beyond her understanding. "What did I do?" she whispered, the weight of the situation finally settling in. The alien's eyes, which had previously been inscrutable, now held something akin to fear. "You have awakened the dormant force, the one that has remained hidden for millennia. And in doing so, you have triggered a chain of events that will unfold across galaxies. The ancient powers that have been sealed away for so long are now stirring. There will be forces that come for you, forces you cannot hope to understand. And once they are unleashed, nothing will be the same." Emma's mind raced. She had thought she was making a simple choice, just another step in her journey to prove herself. But now, standing in this ancient chamber with the key in her hand, she realized how little she truly understood. The key wasn't just a tool. It was a catalyst, a trigger that could bring about unimaginable change. And those changes were already in motion. The air around her grew colder, and the room began to hum with an even greater intensity. The key, still glowing brightly in her hand, felt heavier than before. It pulsed with power, as if it was alive, and Emma could feel it calling to her, urging her to unlock even more of its secrets. But she hesitated. "What now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do I do with this power? How do I control it?" The alien stepped forward, its face unreadable. "You cannot control it. No one can. This is a force beyond comprehension. The only thing you can do now is prepare. Prepare for what's coming." Emma took a step back, her mind spinning. She had always wanted to be part of something bigger, something important. But this was beyond anything she had ever imagined. And yet she couldn't deny the pull of the key. She could feel its power coursing through her, urging her to learn more, to understand what she had just unleashed. "You must leave this place," the alien instructed, its tone firm. "The key's energy will attract attention, both from those who seek to use it for their own gain, and from those who will stop at nothing to destroy it. You will be hunted, Emma, not just by enemies, but by the very forces that you've set into motion." Emma nodded, though uncertainty clouded her mind. She had come here seeking knowledge, seeking a place where she could belong. But now she understood that she was part of something much larger, a force that could either save or destroy the universe. The alien's voice softened, almost sorrowful. "You have the potential to shape the future, but it will not be easy. You will face trials, dangers, and enemies, unlike any you have ever known. But you must be strong, for the fate of countless worlds depends on your actions." As Emma turned to leave the chamber, her thoughts swirled in a haze of confusion and fear. She had taken the first step, but she wasn't sure where that path would lead. She knew only one thing: there was no going back. The choice had been made, and now she would have to face the consequences of her actions. With the key still glowing in her hand, Emma stepped out of the chamber, the weight of the universe pressing down on her. The adventure was only beginning. But as she walked into the unknown, she knew that her life would never be the same again. The future was uncertain, and the challenges ahead were terrifying. But Emma was no longer just a girl seeking a place to belong. She was something far more important, a key figure in a struggle that would shape the destiny of all worlds.